It's the year 1932. Ukraine is one of the largest grain-producing regions in the world. Its farmland doesn't just feed its population, but a significant amount of the Soviet population too. There is no drought, no war, not even major fall in production. But still, in the next year, millions will die out of starvation. In the year leading up to 1932, Ukraine underwent a number of changes that would determine its future. After the collapse of the Russian Empire, Ukraine experiences a very small period of freedom before becoming a part of USSR. By 1920s, it becomes one of the most important regions due to its high agricultural productivity. Ukraine's population was largely rural and used to operate on farmlands owned by them individually. The lands were highly fertile and were mass producer of wheat. They were also regarded as the breadbasket of Soviet Union. At the same time, Stalin was in power, who wanted entire control over the wheat production in Ukraine. The Soviet Union was moving in a very different direction. By the late 1920s, Joseph Stalin began pushing for rapid industrialization. The goal was to transform the Soviet Union into a modern industrial state in a short period of time. This transformation required enormous resources. Factories, machines, railways, and infrastructure all needed funding, and the Soviet had limited access to foreign currency. And that's where agriculture, especially grain, becomes a central part of the solution. And Ukraine became the best choice for funding this process, as they were one of the biggest wheat-producing regions of the world. To make this system work, the Soviet leadership moved to eliminate private farming. Land, equipment, and livestock are reorganized into collective farms under state control. This process, known as collectivization, was meant to increase efficiency and make grain extraction more predictable. Many Ukrainian farmers opposed this collectivization. So, to make his plans work, he launched a propaganda in which he labeled all the farmers opposing collectivization as kulak. Punishment ranged from imprisonment to sometime even execution. And more brutality was yet to start. The farmers who survived were going to face one of the deadliest man-made famine in history. The Holodomor, which means murder by starvation. See, the Stalin government set a minimum quota on the yield of wheat. The farmers were forced to fulfill that quota, regardless of the condition on the ground. If they failed to meet the requirement, they were punished. Grain was taken directly from farms and households, often leaving families with nothing. In many cases, officials seized not only grain, but all available food, vegetables, meat, stored supplies, and even seed reserves meant for the next planting season. Entire villages were placed on blacklists for failing to meet state demands. Blacklisted communities were cut off from trade and supplies. Shops were closed, deliveries halted, and access to food from outside the village was blocked. And at the same time, movement of people was restricted. As food ran out, people attempted to leave in search of food or work in neighboring cities. But the state authorities tightened the border control, and peasants were forcibly returned to their villages. Starvation starts to spread quickly in the countryside. The famine is most severe in rural areas, where families depend entirely on local food sources. Urban populations experience shortages, but villages bear the brunt of the crisis. As months passed, food reserves started to exhaust. People started to consume whatever they could find. They began to eat grass, rodents, birds, pets, and in some extreme cases, some people even resorted to cannibalism. And in late spring 1933, death rose sharply, out of which June was the deadliest month. Due to lack of enough evidence, it's difficult to estimate the death numbers, but still some research shows that almost 4 million people died. By late 1933, the Soviet state eased pressure, not because of mercy, but necessity, as Ukraine's labor force collapsed and grain extraction became unsustainable. As the famine unfolds, the Soviet government refuses to acknowledge it publicly. Officially, there is no mass starvation in Ukraine. Reports describing widespread hunger are dismissed as exaggerations, lies, or hostile propaganda. At the administrative level, the famine was actively concealed. Death records were altered or reassigned to other causes. However, international response was still limited. Many governments were reluctant to confront the Soviet Union directly, and some journalists and political figures publicly questioned or downplayed the reports. As a result, the famine continues largely unchallenged from the outside. For decades afterward, the Soviet state maintained its denial. Discussion of the famine was suppressed, archives are closed, and public memory of the event was deliberately erased. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the famine was finally studied openly. Many countries today recognize it as a deliberate act of mass starvation. Russia continues to reject that interpretation,